In this video, we'll be going over IRS Form 14157A, Tax Return Preparer Fraud and Misconduct Affidavit. So, taxpayers who believe that their tax return preparer has done something above and beyond in terms of filing your tax return would use this to specifically report their tax return preparer's behavior to the IRS, and if they're looking for a change to their tax account. So this could be because the tax return preparer altered their tax return or did something else that rises to the level of fraud or misconduct. So most tax return, the taxpayers should be familiar with IRS Form 14157, which is a simple complaint form. We've put links in the show notes to that video and article that we've created on that, so you can see the difference. You will also complete that form in addition to filing this, but specifically fraud or misconduct are separate categories of complaints that the IRS will investigate separately, especially if it has to do with your money. So we'll go through this tax form. We'll be completing it on behalf of our taxpayer, John Doe, as we do. So let's go ahead and get to it. So let's go ahead and put in our taxpayer's information and his spouse, Mary Doe. So a note is that if you are filing a joint tax return and you're making a complaint jointly for that return, then on page 2, when we get to the taxpayer signature, both spouses will have to sign and date this. So just keep that in mind. You'll enter your taxpayer ID number. The form instructions aren't very particular, but if you're using the fill-in form on the IRS website, it only gives you enough space to provide one social security number or an individual taxpayer ID number, ITIN, if you don't have a social security number. So you'll enter your mailing address, your street, city, state, and zip code. If you recently changed your mailing address, it would be good to also file a change of address form, either IRS Form 8822, which is your individual taxpayer change of address form, or IRS Form 8822-B, which is the change of address form for a business, or a change of responsibility form if you're transferring responsibilities. So we'll put links in the show notes to all of these, to resources on all of these forms that we've mentioned. So the name of the tax return preparer, let's see. WWE fans might be familiar with this one. Erwin R. Shyster, IRS, or his initials. He was a bad guy back in the 90s, I think, in pro wrestling. So you can put the name of your tax return preparer as it appears on your tax return. And then down here, you're going to provide some information about the type of fraud or misconduct that applies. So right here in the check boxes, outline, you can check as many as you want. So and these are all things that tax return preparers know for a fact that they are not supposed to do. So these are very clear red line examples of red line behavior that every tax preparer should fully know that they're not allowed to do. Tax return preparer is not allowed to file a tax return using your name or your social security number without your knowledge, without your consent, and without your signature. Although you can authorize an e-signature on your behalf, but all of that has to be authorized. A tax return preparer altered my tax return without your knowledge or consent. Provided me with a copy of my tax return, which is different from what was filed with the IRS. So this is definitely a no-no. A tax return preparer received all or a portion of my refund without my knowledge or consent. So this is a big red flag right here, because even if you did consent or if you had knowledge, a tax return preparer is not allowed to receive any portion of your tax refund, period. So a lot of shady things happen. Sometimes they'll receive a portion of your refund and they cut you a check that bounces, or they cut you a check and then somehow that was stolen money, so that gets garnished. Whatever it is, if you file a tax return, your refund should come directly from the IRS, either in the form of a check to your address as you listed on your tax return, or to a financial account that you control and that you authorized on your tax return, period. So again, had your refund or a portion direct deposited into an account that was not mine, promised me a refund that I never received, and the IRS did not contact me about the refund. So I'm going to put a pause here. The tax return preparer should never promise. There should be a lot of things that they do promise along the lines of integrity, knowledge of the tax law, things of that nature, their professional terms of service, things of that nature. But they should never promise you anything about a refund. Even if they prepare your tax return and your tax return shows that you have a refund, there should never be a promise attached to that, because the tax return preparer doesn't know if you gave them all the paperwork. They don't know if the IRS is going to flag your return for some reason, and they don't know if you're, possibly part of a tax refund offset program. So they should never promise you a refund at all. So these bottom three, a refund that you never received, a refund for a different amount, or they promised you a refund and they gave you a check that bounced. So this is another big red flag. This is a tax return preparer that is doing some shady things. And these are all instances where the tax preparer knows full well these are things that they are not allowed to do. So let's go ahead and just say that they altered my tax return without my knowledge or consent, and they had a portion of my refund direct deposited into an account that wasn't mine. So you would list the tax years that were impacted for each box checked above. Let's just say that this happened in the 22 and the 2023 tax season, but you actually have been using them since 2019. And then do you have a relationship with a tax return preparer? So let's just say that you are neighbors or no coworkers. And, maybe Mr. Shyster is just a coworker. He's that go-to guy that lots of people at work ask because they know that he does taxes on the side, or as a side hustle, or he's just kind of the financial guy that people come to. So he charges $50 a tax return to help people with their tax returns, and he started doing some squirrely stuff that you don't like. So how did you know that this person prepared income tax returns? So the IRS is looking into this as, did you receive a flyer? Is this like an aggressive promotion, or was this word of mouth? Is this like a friend of yours? Because they do investigate different types of fraudulent schemes, not just the ones that are reported on IRS Form 14157A. So there are lots of fly-by-night tax preparation services. There are things called ghost return preparers, where they kind of prepare your tax return for you, but they never put their preparer tax ID number or PTIN on your form. That's a big red flag. So There are lots of shady, abusive tax schemes that people are doing where they'll inflate your deductions, get you a really big tax refund, peel some of it off into a side account that you never know anything about. And then by the time you find out, you're dealing with a giant mess and they've already left town and gone somewhere else. So, uh, you know, all the information that is being asked is pretty important because the IRS takes this seriously and they really want to know if your complaint matches up with something else or is part of a trend. So in this case, I don't think that's let's just say that John Doe doesn't think this is like a anything outside of work. That's how he found out. He just found out from a friend at work that you know Mr. Shyster does tax returns, and he got tired of paying his accountant a few $100s, so he approached Mr. Shyster, who said he would do it for $50. So, did you receive a refund? Enter the amount if you expected. So let's just say you entered your refund, you received $500, but you were expecting $1,000. Did you contact your preparer or your financial institution? So I'll put a red flag here because if you did not, then if that's the only thing that is compelling you to file a complaint, then it might not be your tax preparer's fault. And I'll back up into something that's known as a tax refund offset. So if you did your tax return and you were expecting to receive $1,000 refund, but instead you got $500, either you or your spouse may have had some some past due debts, back taxes, unpaid child support, student loans, unemployment compensation, overpaid Social Security, state or local taxes. Those are kind of the big, most common reasons why the Treasury Department would offset your tax refund. And it's called an offset, but you can think of it as garnishing your refund to pay off other debt. So before you just put your tax return preparer on blast, if that's the only thing that's suspicious, then you might want to ask the IRS about that. You can file a form that would actually ask you about your tax refund. So I believe I pulled up a separate page. There's a page on the IRS website where you can call the 800 number, 829-1952, to use an automated trace system. If you're a married couple filing a joint return, you may need to file IRS Form 3911, which basically says, hey, where did my refund go? Maybe the check got sent to you in a different at a different address. Like if you changed your address and you forgot about that, maybe the check went to the wrong address. Maybe you misentered your account information and it got sent to the wrong account. So you could file IRS Form 3911 before just escalating this to the point of fraud. And as we get to the rest of the tax form, the supporting documentation requirements kind of make it a little bit more clear, how you should approach. So let's just say that you did contact your tax return preparer and there was no response. So then, there's a note at the bottom, a refund trace. You may need to trace your refund. Did you pay a fee to your tax return preparer? Let's just say it was $50. And then how did you pay your fee? Again, tax preparers are not allowed to deduct your fee from a tax refund. You can write a check. You can pay them by money order. They can take credit cards. But your fee and your refund should be completely separate. They can't charge you a percentage of your expected refund as your fee. They can charge you a complexity fee. So you might notice that your tax return is, the cost may be different from year to year. If you had to file different schedules, for example, if you had to file a Schedule C, that might be more expensive than just, the tax return that involves, collecting your Form W-2s and just putting them on your Form 1040. So, but you're not allowed to charge, or a tax preparer is not allowed to charge a contingency fee based on the size of your refund. So then at the bottom, do you authorize the IRS to disclose your identity to your bank? Specifically, this will help them trace your refund to see if it landed in your account or not. So if you say yes, then that will help the IRS do that. If you say no, you don't have to, but it might impede the IRS's ability to track down where your money went. And then on the following page, you're going to use this part to provide the narrative. So let's just say Mr. Shyster promised a $1,000 refund, but I only received $500. He sent this return to the IRS without me signing it or reviewing it. Whatever the case may be. So, definitely. So you can fill that out as much as you want. It's your narrative. You should put in all the appropriate details that you think will help the IRS. And then what you're going to do is you're going to sign a date at the bottom. You'll enter your telephone number in case there are any follow-up questions from the IRS. And then we're going to go over the supporting documentation requirements. So this basically is just the amount of documentation that you're going to need if you end up filing this complaint. So you're going to need to accompany this with IRS Form 14157, which is the standard complaint about your return preparer. And then you're going to need a signed copy of your tax returns as they were intended to be filed, not necessarily what was sent to the IRS. And then you're going to send a copy of the tax return that you received from your tax preparer. In addition, you need to provide two pieces of evidence, or at least two categories of evidence. One, it needs the first piece of evidence needs to ascertain that the tax preparer held themselves out as being in the business of preparing tax returns. That's this right here. We'll go over examples of that in just a moment. The second thing is that you need to corroborate that there was interaction between you and the tax return preparer. And then finally, if you received a refund that was different from what you expected, then you need to file a police report with your local law enforcement agency and then attach that to all of the other documentation. So evidence that corroborates whether or not the tax preparer is holding themselves out in the business of preparing returns. So it could be a copy of a tax return received from the tax preparer that identifies them. It could be a business card, a flyer, advertisement, business name on a check that they might have given you, the professional or business letterhead bearing an email or a name of the preparer. You could print out an email if there's like an official company email address. So anything that says this person's clearly in the business of preparing tax returns. And then the second category is basically any proof that you and the tax return preparer were in conversation or, coordinating to prepare your return. So a copy of your return, copy of the documents that you received from them, IRS Form 8879, which is your signature authorization showing that you signed it and you gave it to them. It could be a negotiated check for payment, a refund check that you received from them, a credit card statement. Any proof that you paid them to do something means that you interacted with them, or emails and text exchanges between you and the tax return preparer. So again, if your refund is different, then you'll need to have a police report, and the police report needs to contain the tax years involved, the return preparer's first name, last name, and address, and then an official statement describing that misconduct. It can be basically the same thing that you put up here. It just needs to also be reflected in the police report. So then you can only file this by mail according to the instructions. If you're submitting this in response to a letter or a notice, you would follow the directions in that correspondence. If you didn't receive a notice, then you can go to our article where we have the map. There are tables from the IRS website that indicate where you should file certain forms based on your location. So there are several IRS service centers. You need to pick the one that corresponds to your state or where you live. So you can find that in our article, as well as the rest of the instructions that we've just gone over with respect to this form. So we'll put links in the show notes to the articles and the videos that we've prepared or that we've done for these different videos. If you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our channel. And if you have any questions, comments, or if there's a topic that you'd like to see discussed in an upcoming video, please hit me up in the comments section. Thank you very much and have a great day.